Burmese Days. Written by George Orwell. Published by INAudio Publishing. Chapter 1. This desert inaccessible under the shade of melancholy boughs, as you like it. U.P.O. Kyan, sub-divisional magistrate of Kyauktada in Upper Burma, was sitting in his veranda. It was only 8:30, but the month was April, and there was a closeness in the air, a threat of the long stifling midday hours. Occasional faint breaths of wind, seeming cool by contrast, stirred the newly drenched orchids that hung from the eaves. Beyond the orchids one could see the dusty curved trunk of a palm tree, and then the blazing ultramarine sky. Up in the zenith, so high that it dazzled one to look at them, a few vultures circled without the quiver of a wing. Unblinking, rather like a great porcelain idol, U.P.O. Kyan gazed out into the fierce sunlight. He was a man of 50, so fat that for years he had not risen from his chair without help, and yet shapely and even beautiful in his grossness, for the Burmese do not sag and bulge like white men but grow fat symmetrically, like fruits swelling. His face was vast, yellow and quite unwrinkled, and his eyes were tawny. His feet, squat, high-arched feet with the toes all the same length, were bare, and so was his cropped head, and he wore one of those vivid Arakanese longis with green and magenta checks which the Burmese wear on informal occasions. He was chewing betel from a lacquered box on the table, and thinking about his past life. It had been a brilliantly successful life. U.P.O. Kyan's earliest memory back in the 80s was of standing, a naked pot-bellied child, watching the British troops march victorious into Mandalay. He remembered the terror he had felt of those columns of great beef-fed men, red-faced and red-coated, and the long rifles over their shoulders, and the heavy rhythmic tramp of their boots. He had taken to his heels after watching them for a few minutes. In his childish way he had grasped that his own people were no match for this race of giants. To fight on the side of the British, to become a parasite upon them, had been his ruling ambition, even as a child. At 17 he had tried for a government appointment, but he had failed to get it, being poor and friendless, and for 3 years he had worked in the stinking labyrinth of the Mandalay bazaars, clerking for the rice merchants and sometimes stealing. Then when he was 20, a lucky stroke of blackmail put him in possession of 400 rupees, and he went at once to Rangoon and bought his way into a government clerkship. The job was a lucrative one, though the salary was small. At that time a ring of clerks were making a steady income by misappropriating government stores, and Po Kyan, he was plain Po Kyan then, the honorific U came years later, took naturally to this kind of thing. However, he had too much talent to spend his life in a clerkship, stealing.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?